Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our fourth cycle of 1999, and on this episode, we're talking about a movie, and that movie is Office Space. I absolutely love this movie, probably one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's just infinitely quotable, it's hilarious. If you've ever had an office job, you could probably relate to a lot of the stuff in this movie. Even if you haven't had an office job, you could probably, like still tie stuff from this movie into kind of your work in some way. I have had some office jobs in the past where I like a lot of this stuff I was able to just completely relate to, like basically meaningless tasks and things like that. So I have some notes here about it, but we're going to get to those. But before that, we have of course, the Initech shirt. One of my favorite shirts. I've had this shirt for years at this point. And another thing iconic from the film is, of course, the red stapler. I've actually had, I think, or two of them. But I have purchased a total of three. So I think I picked this one up in like 2008. I think it was like on like ThinkGeek or something. And then I ordered another one from them as a gift for a friend of mine. And then was out shopping at like a thrift store and actually found another one. So I have one at home. Gave one away as a gift, and then the third that I got more recently, I actually have in my office at my job. But one of the most iconic things of the movie is the red swing line stapler. And we'll get to that later in the video as there is some cool stuff about that stapler. So just get the notes here, get them opened up. We'll get started here. So Office Space released February 19th, 1999. Completely did not plan this out, but that actually was just yesterday. So it just had its 26th anniversary, I think. Yeah, because 2024 would have been 25th. So 2025, 26 years since this movie was first released. Cool thing I did with this movie, when I had a Creative Zen Vision M, that was like my first like MP3 player. It was obviously like an MP3 player, but you could also load up videos on it. And I think I had like this movie on there, and I was remember at work, I would just listen to it, like have like a headphone in and listen to the dialogue. The dialogue is iconic, but it would basically, and then eventually I moved that over to like an iPod Classic. I don't think I have it on my current phone now or any more recent kind of phones that I've had. But it was a thing I would do where I would basically just listen to the movie and just kind of like as I was working, just basically play it. It was playing video, but I was mostly just listening to the audio. And I always found when I would listen to it or even just watch it, I rewatched it again just today actually. It makes whatever issues you're having at your job, if you have any issues, it makes them all seem like insignificant. Like it actually makes me feel better about like the jobs or that I've had and things like that, because it could be basically, I always say it could be much worse as it is for a lot of the characters in this movie. Even though this is office work, it might not necessarily apply to every single job, but I always find it when I watch this movie, it just is like weird, like oddly like therapeutic in a way where it's enough to say like, hey, like cool, whatever issues that you have at your job, it's nothing compared to this, compared to what the characters in this movie go through and happen to see. It covers like office work, but it also somewhat goes into restaurant work as well with Jennifer Aniston's character. Unfortunately, the next thing in my notes here is in 2008. There's no pictures of this, unfortunately, and I probably have to recreate this if I wanted to do it again. And this is before I had an iPhone, and I think this is like iPhone came out in 2007. I think by 2008 they were on their second. But a lot of people I worked with at that point still had like flip phones. I think I had like my phone wasn't even a cam. I don't think I even had a camera on my phone at that point. It was at that point I still had a landline, but it was just like a LG flip phone that I had since like 2000, from like 2005 to 2012 when I finally got an iPhone. But in 2008, I did a Bill Lundberg costume. It's probably my favorite costume I've ever done for Halloween. Um, Basically, just like khaki pants, button down kind of business shirt, the suspenders, glasses. I actually took like cheap aviator sunglasses, and popped the lenses out to make them kind of look like the glasses that Lundberg wears in the movie. A friend of mine also gave me a very cheap, just like huge ring, because Lundberg has a ring on his finger. I think that was from a prop from a show that Gary Cole was on, like right before this, and it just fit the costume well, so they let him use it. I had the Initech coffee cup because I think I got that at like a Christmas party one year. It was like a full Office Space kit. It had the Initech mug. It had a banner that said, "Is this good for the company?" A bunch of other. It had like a mini red stapler, not the full size one, but a mini red stapler. And a bunch of other just Office Space like stuff. I actually have a somewhat decent collection of Office Space like things, like aside from the stapler. I think I have like somewhere I have like a Bill Lumberg bobblehead. Think Geek did I think it's lucite as a material. I think it is. It's like almost like a thick acrylic. I think they call it. I think it was made of lucite, but it had the Initech logo like embedded in it, and it was like this clear material, and it said "No Talent Ass Clown," which is a Michael Bolton joke from the movie. But it came with like a little stand you could put it on, and it would rotate and have LEDs that would light it up. I have a couple screenplays from the movie. I don't think these are like official screenplays. They're apparently signed by like some of the cast, which I don't. I think the signatures are probably photocopied because I got them on eBay like years ago, and they were like 15 or $20. So I seriously doubt they were like hand signed by like anybody involved. But I have a couple scripts from the film that were like, I think basically these people are just printing these scripts off, hole punching them, and then that's it. But like it's kind of a cool thing to have. So a couple of those scripts, like I said, the Bill Lumberg bobblehead, the staplers, and then like a couple other Office Space like merch kits. I think there's a thing called like the Box of Flair, which is just a bunch of buttons. If you've seen the movie, you know it. The 37. Or like he's like, oh, that guy's got 37 pieces of flair on, and you've only got 15. But just a bunch of Office Space merch. Obviously, the shirt. I have another Office Space shirt that just has Milton on it, saying, "I believe you have my stapler." But yeah, that costume I did was really cool. To tie back to that, again, it was like aviator glasses with the lenses popped out, the tie and suspenders and shirt and like khaki pants. I found TPS report cover sheets and printed those out and just brought those to this I think it was like Halloween at like a bar I went to. I had like the stapler in my pocket as well. It was just a really cool costume. Unfortunately, I said no images of it. Obviously, it was a different time. 2008, like 18 years ago now. Let me see. Let me do the math on this. So 2008 to 2018 is 17 years ago, I guess. But just a really cool costume. Let me see here. So back to the stapler. So in the film, they wanted this stapler to kind of pop on the screen, and Swingline did not make a red stapler. So they just basically took a black Swingline stapler, painted it red, and that's what they used for their prop. And then people actually contacted Swingline asking for a red stapler that they didn't make, and then obviously enough people at that point were requesting the stapler that they just started making red staplers. So kind of a cool thing with the stapler there. Let me see here. This is Mike Judge's first live action film. I think it's his second overall if you count the first Beavis and Butthead animated film, Beavis and Butthead Do America from I think 1996. But first live action film. The follow-up that's kind of in the same vein as Extract, Extract is still a good movie, but it's not nearly as good as Office Space. They work at like an extract, like a flavoring extract company. It was I didn't see it in theaters, but I think I rented it on DVD from like Netflix when I had a DVD account with them. And Extract is good. It's like a companion to this movie. It's just not nearly as good or iconic as Office Space. This film, unfortunately, was not well received, like commercially. So I think it cost 10 million to make. It only grossed 12 million. And if you go off the formula, which is like what, like 2.5x to make money, it would have needed to make like 25 million to kind of be like successful, like on like the low end. And it wasn't successful at all, unfortunately. However, though, it did become a cult classic. And I think it's done well. It's probably definitely like has made its money back now, based on kind of people like buying it on DVD or Blu-ray, and things like that. So didn't do well commercially, but let's see here. A lot of the stuff in this movie is just infinitely quotable. The memes and things like that came out of this movie are great. Like them just destroying the printer is iconic. Stuff about like PC load letter and kind of Bill Lumbergh just being like, yeah, I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow, and I need you to come in on Sunday. Like Lumbergh became very iconic. Like I said, a lot of the stuff it got like I remember one of my favorite commercials for World of Warcraft is a repurposed scene from this movie where Peter is playing Tetris, and in that commercial for World of Warcraft, they just edited the computer screen to have World of Warcraft on it. You have the Bobs, the whole thing with Michael Bolton, the damn it feels good to be a gangster scene. Like it's just there is so many things that have basically kind of that this movie did and then have become kind of iconic like on the internet. I remember like there was a whole series of video. I think we don't like call them videos, but on YTMND, You're That Now Dog, a lot of Office Space memes were put up there, kind of like shortly after that site launched. Like I said, just amazing quotes. The whole thing about pieces of flair and like things like that. That like jump to conclusions, Matt. The Bobs are great, so it's just incredible. The cast is really good. So you have Ron Livingston, you have Jennifer Aniston, you have David Herman, you have Gary Cole as Lundberg, of course, and then just a bunch of other characters. And like I think Mike Judge plays, I think like the manager of the Tchotchkes restaurant, which is supposed to be like a TGI Fridays kind of knockoff. I remember doing my research for this. After this movie came out, apparently TGI Fridays actually they got the idea for the pieces of flair from that, and after this movie came out, or after it got popular on like TV or like renting it on like VHS or DVD, TGI Fridays actually like stopped having their employees wear all the buttons and all that stuff, because apparently people would go in there and kind of just make fun of it. So it was based on an actual TGI Fridays thing that eventually, like they stopped doing it because they were just kind of getting trolled for it, I guess. Let's see here. The movie was based on the Mike Judge animated Milton shorts, which were on Liquid Television, I think like in the early 90s. They then offered, like they wanted initially the movie to be about Milton, but I think Mike Judge wanted it to be an ensemble cast with Milton being one of the characters, but not the only character. So really, it focuses mostly on Peter, but Milton is sprinkled in throughout the movie. It's Milton. You have Milton. You have Peter. You have Samir and Michael Bolton are like the four leads, and then of course like Joanne, played by Jennifer Aniston. Let's see here. Apparently, Lawrence, who's played by I think Dietrich Bader, was actually inspired by one of Mike Judge's actual like neighbors, who was kind of like doing like the kind of work that Lawrence does, making more money than Mike Judge did when he was working in Silicon Valley, and kind of inspired that whole character. I think Fox requested that they have somebody recognizable in the movie, because a lot of the actors in this movie at this point were not super well known. I think David Herman was on Matt TV. Gary Cole had done a few things here and there. So they wanted a recognizable actor or a character in the thing. That's how they got Jennifer Aniston, obviously huge from Friends and some other films. And this is kind of one of the Jennifer Aniston films where I feel the movie is good enough on its own, and that I don't immediately think of her as playing Rachel from Friends. Because usually when I see her in a movie, I can't disconnect her from that role on Friends just because it's so iconic. And this one, it kind of veers into that territory a little bit, because like both Rachel and Joanne work at, like, Rachel worked at the Central Perk. Joanne works at Tchotchkes. They both work in the kind of food service, at least temporarily, for Rachel and friends. But I feel that the character is different enough. Her character is different enough from that, because I definitely, like, whenever I watch a movie with Jennifer Aniston, it's very hard for me to not think of Rachel Green from Friends. But so they wanted her in there. Apparently, after the movie came out, Mike Judge got, like I said, it didn't do well commercially, but he said he got a very nice a voicemail from Chris Rock about the movie. Apparently, he went on a date with Madonna after the movie came out, and I think, like, Jim Carrey, like, invited him to his house. So basically, he was getting the recognition for the movie, even though it didn't get, like, it wasn't well received commercially. So they put that down. So that's our notes, and we're now going to get into the plot of this film. So the plot of the film is basically, it follows the story of mostly Peter Gibbons, who works at Initech right here. Initech, obviously the main company in the movie that I think does, like, banking software, and they're updating. Peter explains that, like, they're doing it for the Y2K switchover, so he's, like, basically making the bank software, like, work when Y2K happens. So they all work at Initech. Beginning of the movie, basically, it's just a Monday driving to work. Basically, gridlock traffic. Like, the lane that Peter's in is at a standstill, and he sees the lane next to him moving, so he moves to that lane. But as soon as he moves into that lane, it comes to a standstill, and the lane that he was in starts moving. That happens a couple times. And then eventually, and this is where we're introduced to the three kind of office characters that are like we see Peter driving, we see Samir, and we see Michael Bolton driving to work. We see Lundberg get out of his Porsche. He's got, like, a vanity plate that says "My Porsche," basically, right up at the door. And Peter has to kind of, like, walk across, like, this, like, big grassy area to get to the office. Goes in and gets shocked by the door. That kind of, he, like, looks at it, and you can just tell he does not want to be here. He absolutely, like, hates coming to work. But gets shocked, sits at his desk, starts getting talked to by Lundberg about the TPS reports. That's, like, one of the most iconic things is make sure you put the cover sheets on your TPS reports. So Lundberg tells him about the TPS report. He's like, did you get the memo on this? And I don't know if this is something that they say a comedy. If you do something 3 times, it's funny. Like, the first time, the second time, and then the third time is kind of like when it becomes funny, or however it goes. After that, he talks to Bill about turning the radio down, and Bill's like, hey, if she can listen to the headphones, I should be able to listen to the radio, or whatever it was. Another one of Peter's bosses comes over and again reminds him about the TPS reports, and he's like, we'll get you another copy of that memo. And then immediately, phone rings, he picks it up, and he's like, yes, this is Peter, and he's like, yes, I have the memo. That's kind of just, like, a lot of just kind of stuff in office jobs is basically hearing the same thing over and over again. And then it cuts to Michael and Samir trying to do some printing. The printer doesn't work, and then Samir just rips the page out of the thing. Peter shows up. He's like, hey, you guys want to get some coffee? And then eventually this is where the whole case of the Mondays thing comes up. He's like, I got to get out of here. And the lady's like, sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays. And she's, like, talking to Michael Bolton about, she's like, are you related to the singer? And that's where the whole no talent ass clown kind of joke, I think, spawned from, was that Michael Bolton's like, why should I be the one that changed? He's the one that sucks. He's like, nothing was wrong with that name until that no talent ass clown started selling or winning Grammys. But they go get coffee. They're at Chachi's. And I think there's Brian, who's got the 37 pieces of flair. Joanne is also walking around. And then Samir makes another comment about the TPS reports. They're talking about kind of like, what if we're doing this when we're 50? And Samir kind of has a very, like, interesting way of looking at things. He's like, well, like, if I had $1 million, I would invest half of it here. I would do this. And then, like, I forget exactly, like, there's another scene in the movie where he's like, and they're talking about, like, doing the scam, talking about like reading a dictionary. Samir's one of my favorite characters in the movie because he kind of looks at things very, I think, like, pragmatically. Maybe that's the wrong term, but things like that. Anyway, they get coffee. They come back. This other guy, I think, like, Sikowski is the guy's name, talking about how he's like, hey, we're going to downsize us or bring in a consultant. We're all going to lose our jobs. And then they're all kind of just like hanging out, and then they have a staff meeting where Lumbergh introduces them to Bob, played by I think it's John C. McGinley. Great role in this movie. He also appeared in Point Break as I think like one of the FBI like directors or something like that. But he plays one of the Bobs. There's another. The Bobs are great. But Lumbergh's basically like, well, like he's like, they're going to help us out. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I think, sorry, before that, you see him talking to Lawrence. He's like, hey, man, does anybody tell you, like, ever say you've got a case of money? He's like, nah, man. He's like, hell no, I believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man. And that's Peter's neighbor who lives right next door to him. But then he's like, he's talking about going to like an occupational hypnotherapist with his girlfriend who apparently is cheating on him, and everybody kind of has the idea that they're like, he's like, I get the feeling she's cheating on me, and Michael and Samir are like, yeah, I get that too. Lawrence says the same kind of thing. Anyhow, they go to work, they do that meeting, and they go to the hypnotherapist, and he's like, can you just like zonk me out so I don't like think I'm actually like work? He's like, that's not exactly what I do. He puts Peter in a trance. The guy has a heart attack, apparently dies. And then Peter is kind of changed from that. Like he gets told to the day, like the Friday that he gets hypnotized. Also, Lumbergh is like, I need you to work on Saturday and Sunday. So he goes in, gets hypnotized. He like oversleeps, like ignores all the calls from work from Lumbergh. He's got like 17 messages, and the guy's like, yeah, it's not a half day. You should like get to work. And then his girlfriend calls, and like basically he hangs up on her. She's like, we're through, and yes, I've been cheating on you, and then that's the end of that. After that, they start doing interviews with the Bobs where they're talking to Tom. They're like, why couldn't the customers just bring the specifications to the engineers themselves and basically eliminate? He's like, I'm a very good people person. You got to help me out with this. I don't know if they ever showed Samir's interview, because I think they definitely interview Peter. They definitely interview Michael Bolton, because the next part, Michael Bolton's talking to them. And they're like, any relation to the singer? What's your favorite song? He's like, I kind of like them all. And they're like, yeah, I celebrate the guy's entire catalog. So they interview him. They eventually, Peter eventually goes back to Tchotchke's, asks Joanne on a date. They go out to like lunch at Flingers, because I think she's like, when you say next door, do you mean Chili's or Flingers? He's like, Flingers. So they go there. They have lunch. She's like, you want to come over and watch some Kung Fu sometime? He goes back to the office to get his address book to write her phone number in. And Michael Bolton's like, hey, man, like, where have you been? You've missed a lot of work. And then he goes in and has this interview with the Bobs where he really, the Bobs love Peter. So, like, he goes in and he's like, well, he's like, I wouldn't say I've really been missing work. And they kind of laugh. And he's like, well, I have 8 bosses. So whenever I make a mistake, I have to hear about it from 8 different people. And he's like, I only really ever do about 15 minutes of work a week. He's like, I kind of just zone out for like an hour, and I do another zone out for like another hour after lunch. And he's like, there's no motivation for me if we ship a few more units. Like, I don't see a dime of that. And they really like Peter, and that kind of in the next scene, they're talking to Lumbergh and the other manager. If I forget his name exactly. They're talking about, like, they're like, well, we can get rid of this guy, and then Peter, like, that guy's got upper management written all over it, and Lumbergh just like, you can definitely tell Lumbergh is not vibing on that at all. They basically like go through a whole bunch of stuff with him, and I don't know what this is supposed to imply, because I noticed this on this most recent rewatch. Is they're looking at Bill's thing, and Bill they take Peter's file and put it down, and they have like Lumbergh's file like up as well. It's only on there briefly, and I paused it when they were on his paperwork, and it didn't seem like there's anything interesting, like anything of note on there really. But they're like, let's talk about the TPS reports, and now it's just an interesting thing because like John C. McGinley does this thing where like you can definitely tell his character is getting worked up, and the other Bob is like, I got this, or he's like, because you can definitely tell like they really like Peter, and John C. McGinley's version of Bob is upset that Lumbergh doesn't. So the other Bob is like, I got this. Like he's like, let me handle this. And they then flip over to Lumbergh's paperwork, and they're like, let's talk about TPS reports. And now it's Lumbergh is getting interviewed. It's like a really interesting like power swing kind of in the whole thing in the movie, because like for the first like portion of the movie, Lumbergh is pretty much in charge. He's pretty much in charge anyway. But then he's kind of in the hot seat now because like they're kind of interviewing him along with telling them like we're going to get rid of Michael Bolton, we're going to get rid of Samir, we're going to get rid of that Tom Segowski guy and all that. Milton is still around, and they fixed the glitch with Milton. Milton's whole thing was that he was fired like years ago, but nobody ever told him that he was fired, and then a payroll glitch kept him employed and kept getting him a check. So they basically fixed the glitch so he wouldn't be getting a check anymore. And then Lumberg constantly is like, let's move your desk back here, and like let's do this. And Milton is just kind of mumbling. He's like, I'm going to set the building on fire. I'm going to do this, do that. He then steals the stapler because I think he's talking to them, and you see the stapler there, like in the like on his desk. And Lumberg like turned the camera, like pans, and he's like, you hear him whisper stapler, like get it out of, like he's like hide the stapler, because like I think like at that point it was like corporate policy to use the Boston stapler, because the whole stapler thing was like we switched from the swing line to the Boston. I kept the swing line because it didn't bind up as much. But then Lumberg steals the stapler and then forces Milton to move his office into the basement. There's a scene, I had another notebook when I did this film for the 1999 series I did about the Brian Rafferty book about 1999 movies, and I don't have that notebook over here, it's kind of like on a shelf somewhere. But there's a part where they're having an office party for Lumberg, and it's just, I put like the note said, no cake for Milton and a sad face. Because like they're like, he's like, well, last year I didn't get any cake, and like the other like lady's like, just pass the cake, and everybody gets their cake except for Milton. Kind of sucks. Milton, I feel bad for him, but he gets put in the basement. Tom Zakowski gets injured in a car accident because he gets fired. And he's trying to run his guitar or his car in the garage. His wife comes home. He pulls out of the driveway and gets just T-boned by a drunk driver. Apparently gets a huge settlement for that. They're basically going to fire both Michael and Samir, but they're going to promote Peter. So he basically is asking Michael Bolton about the computer virus you can program, because he's like, hey, like they're promoting me, but they're firing you two. You guys, we should totally do this virus thing, and they actually do it. And Michael Bolton's like, well, I can program the virus, but I don't know the credit union software well enough to like implement it. He's like, yeah, but Samir knows that software. So like they basically work together. They put it on a disk. Peter installs the disk into the credit union mainframe, and what it's supposed to do is there's these fractions of a cent that get rounded off, like in transactions. Like we're literally talking about like he's like fractions of a penny, as Peter would say. And what it's supposed to do is those fractions usually get rounded off, but this takes those fractions, rounds it. I think Peter says it rounds it down and throws it into their own like little account. So they do this thing. And there's a huge kind of screw up. Also, before this, there's like, I think the character's name is Drew, and he only has like 2 scenes in the movie. But he's talking about, he's like, I'm going to show that lady from accounting my O-face or whatever it was. And then you see him again at the party where he's like, oh, like you should be careful around Joanne because she went out with Lundberg like 2 years ago. So he's trying to explain to Jennifer Aniston's character about the whole virus thing. And then, like on the next like day at work, he goes in, and before that, they installed the software, the virus, and then the iconic printer scene happens. He's like, oh, I stole something from the office, and they're like, yeah, I guess we all did. He's like, no, I stole something else. He's like, you can call it a going away gift, and it's just shows it's the Ghetto Boys still plays as they are beating up this printer. It's just an iconic film scene. And it's just cool because it's got like various perspectives. You see them like kicking it, and then you see them hitting it with like a baseball bat. One of my favorite parts is Michael Bolton is like stabbing it with a baseball bat like that, and then eventually just throws the bat away and starts pounding on the printer with his fist. Samir and Peter had to like hold him back, and almost like a wrestling style brawl. You see like 2 guys holding Michael Bolton back, and Michael bolts back to the printer and starts attacking it again before they drag him away. But they beat up the printer. Peter then the next day checks the bank account, and there's a problem with the virus. So now it's basically deposited like $305,000 into this account. It was probably supposed to be, they said it would take a few years or a couple years for it to like work. So it was probably supposed to be like $3.05, or maybe like even just like 35 cents or something. But Michael, like basically they're freaking out. Michael Bolton's like, I probably put him like a decimal in the wrong place. They eventually are trying to come up with ways to fix the issue, including like money laundering, and they're looking up money laundering in a dictionary. So we're talking about all this stuff, like ways to like potentially fix it. I think the guy's name is Steve, and he's a magazine salesman, and he's like, I used to be addicted to drugs, and now I'm not. I like to sell magazine subscriptions. So they bring him in, and they explain this whole kind of thing to him. And then he's like, "You're not going to tell anybody about this, are you?" He's like, "Well, that depends." And they buy a bunch of magazine subscriptions from him to kind of like they buy his silence, basically. But he's like, "No, I'm a former, like, I used to work in software engineer, and I got fired. I think he worked at Inatrode, which is like the competing company. And then he's just like, I actually make more money selling magazine subscriptions than I ever did working for yeah, he mentions like he's like I make more of them selling these magazine subscriptions than I did at Inatrode, and they're like Inatrode. He's like, you're not gonna tell anybody about this, are you? He's like, that depends on how many magazine subscriptions you buy. So they buy about, all right. At least Peter's like, what am I gonna do with 40 subscriptions to Vibe, whatever it was. Peter, I think this happened like right before this. Peter and Joanne have a huge fight about kind of like her past like relationship with Lundberg, and eventually it's revealed that it's a obviously he thinks it's Bill Lundberg, his boss. It's a different Lundberg that used to work at Intro before he moved to Atlanta. So she also quits Flinger or gets fired from Tchotchkes because like there's the whole thing with the 37 pieces of flair. He's like, Brian has 37, you only have 15, and he's like, and I think the guy's name is Stan is her manager. He talks to her about that a couple times, and then she just like flips him off and gets fired. And he's like, if you want the minute to be 37, just make it 37. And then he's like, well, we want you to express yourself. She's like, yeah, you're right. And then she flips him off, and then gets fired. But Peter decides to take the blame for the virus. He takes all they have checks. He's got checks in an envelope with a letter written to Lundberg. Tells Joanne what he's going to do, and he goes into the office, slides it under Lundberg's under his door, tries to get it open again. He can't. He's like, well, whatever, it's done. Milton shows back up and is like, hey, like I've been told to talk to Mr. Lundberg. I've been told to talk to payroll about like why I'm not getting my checks. The secretary's just like, just go sit at your desk and we'll figure it out. He eventually goes into Lundberg's office. I think because like, well, obviously the stapler's in there now, but you see him go in there, and then nothing happens, and you see Peter driving to the office to kind of like confess to basically stealing this like huge amount of money, and the building's on fire. And then you see like their firefighters are trying to put the fire out. You see Milton kind of sneak away, and then it cuts to Peter, no longer at Initech, but he's now working with Lawrence doing like construction work, but they're doing more like just like fire cleanup at this point. So they're like shoveling up like debris from the Initech fire, and they find the burned up red stapler. And the guy's like, he picks it up, and Lawrence is like, man, you don't want that thing. That thing's toasted, man. He's like, I think I know someone that might want this. Samir and Michael show up. They're now working at Inatrode, and they're like, yeah, it's still work. He's like, we can get you a job there if you want. And Peter's like, no, I think I'm good here. Like he's like getting exercise, working outdoors, and he's like FNA, and then or Lawrence says that, and then Peter says it back to him, and then it cuts to Milton, who's now in the like a tropical area of some kind, complaining. He's like, I ordered the Mai Tai and there's salt on the margarita or whatever. He's like, I can get this whole place shut down. So he obviously grabbed all of the checks that Peter had left there, set the building on fire, and left. And now basically all the evidence kind of burned up with it. So Peter's confession is toasted, and he kind of like, and they don't exactly say what happened to Initech. So like Initech is probably that particular office. You would think they had multiple offices in like multiple like cities and states maybe. That particular one, it's pretty much like done. So kind of like any evidence that, you know, like the credit union mainframe that Peter installed the virus on probably got burned up. The computer that Michael programmed it on probably got burned up as well. So basically everybody kind of gets what they want in the end. Peter gets a job that he likes. He gets back together with Joanne. Samir and Michael get a similar job at Inatrode, and Milton gets to burn the building down and gets the money, and doesn't care about the stapler at that point because now he's got $305,000. But that's basically the plot. Like, I absolutely just love this film. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. I ended up watching it. I actually have it right here. I don't think it's streaming on any service that I have, so I actually had to break out the classic DVD here, so the special edition with Flair. I don't have it on Blu-ray. I should add it to my Blu-ray collection at some point. But that is the version that I ended up watching just recently for this. Just a great film. Again, just an amazing comedy, great cast, like just stellar. Highly recommend checking it out. But that is going to do it for this episode. We'll be back again in a few days with another video game episode from 1999. So until then, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.